So this is just an explanation video of how to do the Gothic writing assignment from that past unit or from the Gothic writing unit. So the first thing was that you could choose to work by yourself or with a partner. I gave 3 work days to work. If your partner misses one, you have to work by yourself, or if they're not here to work with you one time, you have to work by yourself. Or if you're doing it alone, you just work by yourself the whole time. So you could choose one of the following projects. You could either write a Gothic poem or write an introduction to a Gothic story. You don't have to write a whole story, like beginning, middle, end, just the introduction to the story. And it would do the things like introduce the setting, characters, conflict, and end with like a twist or like a ... And then consult the rubric below. So the rubric's on Canvas. But just to go through that again, style. Is the style true to that of a story or a poem? And what I mean by that is looking at these examples, like Annabel Lee in Alone, lines are not super long. Each line has its own, line, and it's broken up into stanzas. So however many lines you want per stanza is up to you. Like for Annabel Lee, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines in each stanza. Or if you're doing like Alone is just one giant stanza with rhyming words at the end. So that just all depends on like what you want to do with it. That is all your choice, writer's choice, on how you want to break up your poem. And your poem can either like tell a story. So like, again, Annabel Lee was a poem and it told a story as well. Like it established who are our characters, the speaker and Annabel Lee. What are they? Who are they? Annabel Lee was rich. They were in love. What happened to her? She died. What happened at the end? He died. It could tell a story like that, or it could be like Alone. Alone is like the idea of being alone and what it feels like. So you could go either way. You could have a poem that's like tells a story, or you could have a poem that kind of describes a feeling or idea. And then with the story, think like The Devil and Tom Walker. Remember, the beginning of that story was just kind of a description of what the land looked like. Who are our characters? What are they like? What is going to be our conflict? What are our characters' problems? Those kinds of things are in the introduction to a story. So if you were choosing the story option, that's what you would include. And then I, again, earlier described the poem option. Now, the poem doesn't have to be split up into stanzas, like I said, but it does need to have a minimum of 20 lines. So what I mean by that is each line of the poem, if it ends with rhyming words, it ends with rhyming words. If you don't want it to rhyme, you don't want it to rhyme. That's fine. Just 20 lines. So it's not 20 stanzas, it's 20 lines of a poem. So those are like the minimums there. And so structure means, do you have lines or do you have stanzas? Does it rhyme or not? What's the rhyme scheme? Those kinds of things. For the story, did you write 2 to 3 paragraphs? So it can't all just be a giant wall of text. You have to split it up into 2 or 3 paragraphs. Is each paragraph indented? Remember, when we write paragraphs, we have to indent the first line of each paragraph. Did you do that? Do you use, and this is for both of them, correct punctuation, spelling, grammar, capitalization, punctuation? I said that twice. Those kinds of things is what will be assessed in the structure as well as grammar and mechanics. So yeah, as long as your writing is clear and understandable, you will get a good score in grammar and mechanics. If the grammar, mechanics, spelling, punctuation, capitalization gets to the point where it's hard to read, that's when you start to lose points. So just be sure to double check your work. And then the meat of it, your poem or story just can't be about anything. It has to follow the elements of Gothic literature. So we talked about that at the very first beginning of the semester in those notes. And it had this slide. Both of these should be on Canvas. Common elements of Gothic literature. So your poem or story has to have at least 3 of these things on the list. So the setting needs to be dark, empty, bad weather, gloomy, scary, depressing, those kinds of things. The tone or the vibe that you give off has to be either dark, haunting, suspenseful. So you don't want to say the bright, cheery sun, because that wouldn't be a suspenseful or dark or haunting tone. You would want to say like the glaring sun, or the sun rays stabbed me in the eyes. Like there's a different way to describe things that gives more of a Gothic literature vibe than it would any other. So make sure that you follow those. Supernatural, include ghosts, spirits, angels in your story. Dreaming and nightmares could be included. Melodrama or internal struggle, so struggling with like personality or struggling with like what to do or how to act. Those are very common. Also, death. If you want an easy one, include a death in your story. So at least 3 of these things needs to be present in your story to get full points. So going back to that rubric, I gave examples on the rubric itself too. Mysterious setting atmosphere, omens, ancient prophecies, women in distress was very common. Basically all the things that are listed in those notes I just described. And so to get full points, you have to have 3 or more of those elements. To get 18 points, you need at least 2. 12 points is if you have 1. And if you didn't write a Gothic story at all, then you get 0 points. If you have any questions or you want me to like look at your work a little bit, I can't fully grade it or fully give a lot of feedback because that's what I'll do when I actually grade it. But if you like have any questions or need any help or want me to explain some of those elements deeper, please let me know. But other than that, this should be a good jumping off point to get started with the Gothic literature writing project on your own. Good luck.